5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
We've all heard the stories about moon landings, lost tools, old rovers, but a living garden from the moon? That's a whole different story. You see, about 50 years ago, NASA sent tree seeds into space during the Apollo missions. They weren't planted on the moon or anything, but they were brought back to Earth. The objective? To study how space travel affected seed growth. But there were rumors about how astronauts tried growing something on the International Space Station as well. And here's where it gets wild. Years later, researchers checked the data, and guess what? Something was actually growing. Not by accident or mistake. No, sir, but real signs of life when it shouldn't be possible. Now, scientists are asking the big question. Is Earth the only place for life, or has something been hidden from us all along? Stay tuned, folks. What's growing up there might change everything we believe. Let's talk about this secret garden plan. Most people know about the Apollo missions. You've seen the clips. American flag, footprints, one small step for man, all that. But what you don't hear about are the hidden experiments. The stuff nobody talks about. The missions within the missions. But what was the nature of these experiments? And what was the real reason NASA had to bury this underground? Well, you might not believe me right now, but this was all part of a bigger plan to make humans a multiplanetary species. You heard that right. NASA experimented with seeds and all sorts of plants in space to see whether they could somehow make the moon or Mars. Liveable. It all started with Apollo 14. NASA ran something called the seed experiment. The official story says they took tree seeds into space to test how they'd react to zero gravity. They brought them back to Earth. Those trees are still standing today in different parts of the world. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if these missions had a hidden objective? What if the real plan was to find a permanent food solution in space? Because if you can grow plants on the moon, you can build colonies. You can make food. You can recycle air, and most importantly, you can survive. But here's where people start asking real questions. Was this just about science, or was it something else? Some say it was a test for secret moon bases. Others believe it was a cover for testing alien material. Whatever the case, NASA kept quiet, and this little secret garden might just be the clue that proves we've been missing the truth the whole time. Or let me ask a better question. What made the Apollo seed experiment stand out? Well, for starters, it was because of the way it opened up the doors for long-term biological research in space. Prior to this, nobody really knew how exposure to cosmic radiation and microgravity might affect living organisms, especially seeds. Sorry to burst your bubble, but this wasn't about testing alien material or some secret hidden bases. And those moon trees I talked about earlier, they were just the start, serving as an early test for future possibilities of growing food beyond Earth. So, yeah, this wasn't something symbolic. NASA didn't exactly send seeds into space just because they could. They sent them because it was practical. Look at it this way. If the seeds could survive space travel and grow normally back on Earth, it meant that the first step toward figuring out a sustainable life support system for astronauts was achievable. Now, of course, over time, that thinking led to more focused experiments. Scientists and experts started studying plant germination in microgravity. Even the Soviet space program joined in, testing their own versions of closed ecosystems aboard their space stations. But the real breakthrough came decades later with NASA's veggie experiment actually producing red romaine lettuce in orbit. It was the first time astronauts had grown something in space, and they could eat it too. There were other experiments as well, including radishes, zinnias, and even chili peppers. It gave scientists a real insight as to how plants adapt there. Growth in low-gravity environments. But again, it all points to the billion-dollar question. Why was it important to grow food in space? What was the need? And most importantly, did NASA want to grow food on the moon? Maybe, maybe not. But here's where things get interesting. This wasn't just a random experiment or anything. It was actually NASA's boldest biology test ever. During the Apollo missions, you see, back in 1971 with Apollo 14, they didn't just send astronauts to collect rocks. They also sent some very unexpected tree seeds. I'm talking about sycamore, sweet gum, redwood, and even Douglas fir. You know, the good old American trees. Hundreds of these seeds were packed up, sent to the moon, orbited, and brought right back down to Earth. But why? Well, to find out how space travel would affect living things. Would radiation from space change their DNA? Or would the seeds grow into some sort of weird, mutated plants? And could we start farming plants for future moon colonies? Here's the twist now. After those seeds returned, NASA planted them all over America. They became known as the moon trees. But here's something even crazier. When those trees grew, something was off. Some grew bigger than usual, while others grew a bit too fast. Some looked completely normal, and scientists couldn't fully explain why certain ones seemed unusually healthy or resistant to disease. In the simplest words possible, some of the seeds turned into super trees. Why did this happen, though? Was it the trip through space? Radiation? Microgravity? Nobody really knew. Stay with me now. This was important because it gave NASA a glimpse of what farming on other planets might actually look like. If plants could survive a brutal journey through space, just imagine what we could grow on the moon or even Mars, for that matter. But after that experiment, NASA pretty much went quiet on the whole idea. There were no longer any detailed studies or follow-ups. It was reduced to some trees planted around the country and a whole lot of unanswered questions about how space permanently changes living organisms. And if those trees came back different, imagine what would happen if we actually tried growing them up there, on the moon itself. What does all this mean for the future, though? Well, that's where things get really exciting. Because experiments like this weren't just about curiosity, they were laying the groundwork for something much bigger. Growing plants in space isn't a cute science trick or anything. It's actually the key to survival if we ever want to build real colonies on the moon, Mars, or beyond. Think about it for a second. Astronauts can't carry enough food for long missions, and supply runs from Earth would be crazy expensive. If we can grow plants in space, we can grow oxygen, food, and even medicine. And here's the crazy part. NASA didn't stop with those moon seeds. After Apollo, the experiments with plants continued on the International Space Station. Astronauts have been testing everything. Lettuces, mustard greens, radishes, and even flowers, you name it. They've already seen weird things happen. Some plants grow faster, some twisted, and some develop new traits we've never seen before. Now, private companies are jumping in too. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and several others are interested in farming beyond Earth. There are plans to build lunar greenhouses. NASA's Artemis program has already talked about permanent moon bases, and they're going to need plants. And get this now. Scientists are now experimenting with gene-editing plants to help them survive in low-gravity, high-radiation environments. Future missions might even carry designer seeds, modified on purpose to grow in foreign or alien soils. So, yeah, that old Apollo experiment wasn't just about sending seeds on a cool trip. It was the first step toward growing a whole new ecosystem. Off-world. The big question now is, what's going to grow next? And will we be ready for it? No one can say for certain, but why now? Why does it matter? Or better, why is this always overlooked? Well, I want you to forget about all those crazy theories for a second. Let's just focus on what we know. Growing plants in space isn't just fun and games. It's not a science experiment either. It's literally the key to us surviving anywhere outside Earth. If we're serious about going to the moon, Mars, or even beyond, you do realize how important it is for us to learn how to grow plants up there. And without plants, we can't breathe, we can't eat, and we can't build long-term colonies. It's as simple as that, folks. Freeze-dried snacks are cute, sure, but they're not going to feed entire moon bases or Mars cities. For that, we need real plants, real food, and real oxygen. How are we going to get all that? Plants. And this weird experiment on the moon, whether people know about it or not, may have been the first real big step in that direction. But little did we know, NASA has been experimenting with this idea for decades now. This is what makes me pull my hair, though. Most people don't realize it, but this isn't exactly new. Even if the Apollo garden stories sound mysterious or suspicious, the idea of testing plants in space is very real, and I can't stress this enough. Very important. Fast forward to now, and the International Space Station has basically turned into one giant floating science lab for this exact reason. I bet you didn't know that either. Yeep, it's true. The International Space Station functions as a part-time garden now. Astronauts have grown lettuce, radishes, zinnias, wheat, mustard, plants, and even chili peppers up there. And it's not just about food. Growing plants help recycle the air, produce oxygen, and absorb the carbon dioxide that astronauts breathe out. All that from just a couple of plants. Here's the crazy part now. Some plants actually grew better. In space, scientists noticed that the microgravity caused plants to twist in strange shapes. And you'd think these plants are fickle or something. Nope, they're actually much stronger. Some of them even developed richer colors or stronger flavors, while others adapted to space in ways we're only beginning to understand. But then again, the moon is a whole different story. Let's not forget, it doesn't have air or soil. Like Earth. Heck, it doesn't even have much protection from cosmic radiation. How in the world are we supposed to grow something? It'll be like growing plants on hard mode. But that's exactly why this experiment matters so much. If the seeds sent to the moon actually started growing even in weird, mutated ways, it would be huge for science. And here's something that makes it all so much more interesting. NASA's Artemis program is gearing up right now to take humans back to the moon. But they're not just going for another flag or footprint moment. This time, they want to stay. And staying means growing food. Not for fun or for an experiment. For actual survival, they're already planning to build lunar greenhouses. And trust me, these aren't going to be just glass domes with dirt or anything. I'm talking about advanced, state-of-the-art, high-tech systems equipped with hydroponics and artificial lights. The astronauts plan to use ice trapped in lunar craters as water, perhaps even mixing in lunar dust with some nutrients from Earth to create some sort of a superspace soil. Superspace soil. I really like the sound of that. But the best part? It's not just NASA. Private companies are in on it too. I'm not just talking about SpaceX or Blue Origin. Companies from Asia and Europe are all in on it, and they don't just want to land ships on the moon now. They want to build permanent stations. And if they're going to build stations, they'll need farms. Why? Because if you can grow plants on the moon, you don't need to come back. And ending expensive cargo rockets full of supplies is officially out of the question. You just need to build a closed system with the plants feeding the people. And the people will breathe out the carbon dioxide which plants need to grow. Add in a water recycling system, and voila. You suddenly have yourself a tiny colony that can support itself. And that, my friends, is the ultimate dream. Because if we can figure it out on the moon, we can definitely figure it out on Mars. Plus, let's not forget the fact that Mars is the real target here. It's the long-term goal for NASA. Think of the moon as just a test. Mars is even harder to reach and survive on. So the moon becomes the perfect testing ground. All this started with a few tiny seeds in a small experiment that barely got any media coverage. And now? It could be the very blueprint for building cities in space. Growing plants in space isn't just about food and oxygen, it's about sanity. Astronauts who worked with plants in space reported feeling better mentally and emotionally. Having something green and alive in the middle of all those metal walls and zero gravity chaos will probably give them a sense of normal life. And trust me, I've never been to space, but growing a small plant can remind you of home. And that goes a long way where everything is foreign and dangerous. But yeah, what if those Apollo garden experiments were more than just tests? What if they were early steps toward permanent moon bases that we haven't fully been told about yet? It would explain why suddenly everyone seems obsessed with going back to the moon. Billionaires, governments, and even private labs. They're all in on it and gearing up for something big this time. So, was this just about growing plants? Or was it about preparing for something bigger? While NASA keeps it quiet, throwing out vague statements and focusing public attention on their new missions instead of explaining the weirdness from the past, let's never forget that the experiments on the ISS worked in growing plants in space is very much possible. The next step? Testing it on the moon. And if that works, Just imagine all the cities we could build in space. Anyway, that's it from my side, folks. So what do you think? The next time we go back, what will we find? A patch of glowing moss? A forest of strange plants nobody can explain? Or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.